One day I will get the sound right on the first try. Hi, welcome to the Monday Method. You know what it is? I have so the microphone I use for these moments has a really sticky mute button. It happens. Anyway, I am what passes for your host, Bright Kelly, and welcome to like a room in my apartment that we weren't using for other things. Um, I am. Ooh, whoa! Hang on one second. All right. So, hi, welcome to the show. I know you guys are watching on Twitch right now. Somebody else might be listening too, but I'm not talking to them just yet. Um, Big screech in the chat. Love that. Love that. Trying something new today, guys. We're actually going to try a little organized discussion about some stuff. I even wrote some things down, which should tell you how much this week has affected me. I'm not going completely off the cuff. So it's been a big week for news, guys. It's even been a big day for news, and we're going to talk about a few things, and we're just going to late night this a little bit. So let's see. What's new today? Well, Trump's still refusing to concede in the election, and he's driving that point home in a few different ways. But the one I find most interesting is the General Services Administration Administrator. Now say that 5 times fast. I'm not gonna. I'll say it one more time. The General Services Administration Administrator. It's a woman named Emily W. Murphy. It's her job to formally affirm Biden. She's the first person in the United States government supposed to do that. She does this by signing a letter that releases funds to Biden and his transition team that gets them started on their process. It covers things like background checks and staff training, and they're doing that already, but they're supposed to get funds from the United States government to help cover those costs, and Emily Murphy is not releasing those. When pushed, and this isn't even the joke, when pushed, a spokesperson at the GSA said, and I quote, "An ascertainment has not yet been made." Which I have to say is about as informative as when citizen Charles Foster Kane mutters Rosebud and then drops his globe to smash on the floor inexplicably before dying. Not great. We do not like Emily. It's not comforting when someone in your government has a very, very simple job and says an ascertainment has not yet been made. And on that Citizen Kane reference, I think that's a good allegory for the Trump administration in a lot of ways just anyway, smashing the globe to pieces and never explaining why. I think that's where we're at. What else? Did you guys hear that Ben Carson has tested positive for COVID-19? Ben Carson, of course, the Secretary of Housing and Urban Development, because when he heard the word urban, Donald Trump said, "Wait, who do I know that's black and likes me?" And I gotta say, I'm struggling with empathy on the Ben Carson score. When asked why he was selected to get sick, a representative for COVID-19 said affirmative action. Oh my God. What am I doing? What am I doing? Oh, hello down there, TikTok. Let me wave at TikTok as well. I'm live on multiple screens right now because I'm still in the same kind of manic episode I was in when the announcement was made. And we'll talk about that a lot tonight, I'm sure. But let's stick to the news. Pfizer has announced a coronavirus vaccine with 90% success rate in clinical trials. I don't really want to know a whole lot about the clinical trials because it sounds like that's a 90% success rate of giving someone the vaccine and then giving them the coronavirus, and I don't really want to think too much about that. But at this news, I got people watching on multiple screens. What's up, Yathena? At this news, stock futures and the price of Bitcoin went soaring, which definitely proves that America is secretly governed by a cabal of money-hungry jackals. And I'm sure will lead to a tweet storm from Cinnamon Hitler that says, "Oh, you ain't ever had it so good." CNN asked people how they felt. Somebody's smiling at me who's a lot funnier than me, which means I'm doing okay. CNN asked people how they felt after the election. They asked about 40,000 people, and most of those people said things like, "I am so relieved," and "I feel safe again." And I'm not kidding. Someone literally said, "Free at last. Free at last. Thank God Almighty, we're free at last." But not everybody felt that way. In that 40,000, there were a few outliers, and I am going to try to read some of those to you. And let me see if we can pull them up, because I'm on multiple screens, which means I no longer have access to the screen I pre-prepared to read these to you. But we're going to see if we can't find them anyway. Or we're going to say goodbye on TikTok and invite everybody who's currently watching on TikTok. Yeah, we're going to do that. Everyone who's watching on TikTok, get your butts over to Twitch. It's the same handle. So, CNN asks 40,000 people, and most people are really, really relieved. A few people are not relieved. And we're going to hear from them because I find them way, way, way more interesting. Because, reasons. So, first off, we've got Allison from Massachusetts, who says, "I feel like America is about to be rudely awakened. This president-elect," in quotes, "and his running mate are too liberal for this country and do not truly understand what freedom costs. I, like many others, will say it again. Joe Biden is a failed career politician. 47 years with nothing but empty promises and a silent 8 years as vice president under the Obama administration. So though CNN and the mainstream media, aka the mob, says that Joe Biden has won, I believe it is still purely speculation, and the truth of this election will come to light. Hashtag Trump forever." Oh my God. Trump forever? I mean, I could pick apart this tweet. We could pick apart the whole "do not understand what freedom costs" thing. We could pick apart the attacks on Joe Biden, who did accomplish a lot in his 47 years as a politician. Whether or not they're things I personally am super jazzed about or not, he did stuff. There was stuff. Stuff was done. In fact, everyone likes to say he never got a bill passed, except for when they want to hit him over the head with his disastrous 1994 crime bill, which I will remind you, he himself has said, it was a mistake. We got it wrong. I don't know. Something to talk about. But Trump forever. The man is 74 years old, and his blood is mostly, at this point, I'm pretty sure, the pink ammoniac slime they use to make Big Macs. The only reason he has survived his own first term is because you can't die of a heart attack when you don't have one. What are you talking about, Allison from Massachusetts? Ugh. And then we've got Jimmy from Louisiana. And when a guy named Jimmy from Louisiana tweets or responds or whatever, it's like a 70-30 shot that it's going to go the way that this is going to go, I think. But he says, "I think it's rigged and that Joe Biden will destroy our country. Nobody talked about the progress and the good things Trump did, only his personality flaws. Most unappreciated and accomplished president of all time." Jimmy, buddy, did he just Kanye everybody? Did he just, "I'm gonna let you finish, but Trump was the most underappreciated"? Oh my God. Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. So, Trump, not William McKinley, who in one term dragged us out of a depression and won a war with Spain and was then assassinated. No, not James Garfield, who in his tenure in the wake of the Civil War expanded civil rights despite popular opinion being dramatically against it, and gave the first African Americans positions in government and was, assassinated? Really? Trump? He's getting out alive. That is proof he is not the most underappreciated president of all time. Jimmy from Louisiana sounds like a bunch of people I know, just to get in on that one. And then finally, and this one is my favorite. I'm going to read it exactly as written, and I'm going to hope that you guys can make more sense of it than I can. But this is Sylvia from the great state of California. Thank you, California. We really appreciate your 55 electoral votes. Sylvia says, "Sad day. in America history. Never seen so much fraud in a election. The media is the worst and never shared all the good President Trump did for the America people. Trump, clean up Obama. Biden mess for 8 suffering years. Now we can look forward to Biden selling out the USA again. The whole country is going to look like the state of California, where so many people have left California. Higher taxes for us who work hard all life. And also I feel that freedom is going away. Now, I'm not sure exactly what Sylvia meant, but I think the gist of it was Trump good, Biden bad, and also I don't understand anything. So Trump cleaned up Obama's pesky tax policies favoring the middle class. It's true, he did. And Trump cleaned up that blossoming, burgeoning economy, replacing it with the same soggy house of cards that he uses to build things like Trump University and Trump Steaks and Trump Vodka and Trump Airlines. In fact, the fact that America isn't bankrupt and being sold off piece by piece to foreign nationals like a really, really, really cherry BMW at an estate sale is actually a testament to the strength of the economy that Trump inherited from Barack Obama. My 2 cents. And again, I want to clarify, I said this in the description, I am wildly unqualified to be saying any of these things, and so is my guest. It's going to be great. But Trump started on third base with a lead, and somehow, in 4 years as president, he has managed to steal first. Come on, Sylvia, what are you doing? So today we're going to unpack politics. We're going to get into the State of the Union. And I just want to be clear, we're not really qualified to do this. We are concerned citizens. That's mostly it. I am a millennial musician currently wearing a kimono. I have a BA in English and a fake brick wall in my apartment. My guest today, David Miller, is a comedian, photographer, and editor of Independent Philly, which is an award-winning blog that mostly focuses on entertainment. And he is also, I will say, more qualified than me because he is an elected Democratic committeeman, committee person, committee thing, committee stuff. He's a committee. He's on the committee. And I want you guys to be really rough with us on questions because you're about to listen for a while to 2 white guys talking politics, and that's like dangerous at the best of times. So, keep us honest and let's do the thing. Let's do the thing. You guys are going to see my screen get funky for a second, and we're going to bring David in, and then I'm going to unmute him, and we're just going to dive in, and we're going to start talking about this stuff, beginning with what David thinks of the monologue I just delivered. All right, let's see now. We want those to go away. We want this to stay away. We're going to make my camera, it's going to go away, and then it's a black screen. Oh no, let me grab that tip ticker. Oh God, what's happening? You guys, I'm so bad at this. And then, bam, screen share. And then, hopefully, bam, full screen. And then somebody on the Twitch chat is going to tell me whether I got all of those things right. And we're going to ask David to unmute. And I'm going to pull up the Twitch chat. All right. Okay, wait. Come on. You're killing me, Zoom. You're killing me. All right. This is what happens when you have to use Zoom for these kinds of things. And David, are you unmuted and with us?
Oh, I believe I am.
Okay, and I'm going to crank my speaker up so we can hear each other a little better. And how am I sounding to you? Am I coming through loud and clear over there?
Loud and clear.
Loud and clear. Okay, so you actually have spent a fair amount of your life being funny on purpose, and I am not one of those people. So how did I do?
I think you did quite well. I mean, first of all, let's take a moment to recap with Jimmy from Louisiana and Sylvia from California. Out of fairness, I feel that we should take a moment to explore Trump's policies that have really helped people more than hurt people.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree. So I think so. So, okay, right off the bat, can you name one?
No, of course not. There are none.
There you go. That's what I was going to say. Now, of course, I mean, I can if you want to be really hypocritical about it. Should we, just for the sake of fun, be hypocritical for a second? If you made a lot of money under the Obama administration, you might have made more under the Trump administration by a little bit. That's true.
Yes.
That's true.
If I was a billionaire, I might feel differently about it. However, I am not a billionaire, nor am I a racist, and therefore Trump has done nothing to benefit me.
Correct. And even though you and I are not explicitly targets of his administration, because we're not racists and because we're not homophobic, a great number of people that we care about deeply are. And so, what does it really matter whether or not people in certain communities are going to make a little more money when the thing that you're trading in order for yourself to make more money is just visiting devastation on marginalized communities? I don't think that's fair. We have somebody in the chat already asking you to do something fun with your green screen.
What would you like me to do?
I was digging the Aurora, but man, surprise us.
Okay, well, let's
Much fancier than me.
Let's go Aurora Borealis.
There you go. So coming to us live from the Arctic Circle, somewhere I assume in the Great White North, aka America's Hat, aka the first most democratic country in North America, and of course we come in at third now. But we'll see if we can turn that around over the next few years. Now,
I had thought about heading to Iceland or Canada to see the Northern Lights for myself, and then I remembered Iceland or Canada doesn't permit Americans anymore.
No, they don't like us anymore. And it's and there's an element of pity to that. They talk about this. They tell us that it's like, "Oh, I feel so bad for you guys, but you can't come here." So,
yes.
And it's not even like Mean Girls. It's not even you can't sit with us. It's like we'd help you if we could, but honestly, we can't. There's no litmus test we can give you to prove that you're like a good American and not the other kind. And that's a certain connection for 5 of us. Yeah, that's true. And it's a funny thing for me trying to see what comes next, because obviously the next and most immediate hurdle is how hard is Trump going to make this? Like how many hurdles is he going to put up? How long is he going to drag this out before he gives into what I think is the inevitable, and understands that he's not going to be president? And so what's your perspective on that? How long is he going to drag this out? How hard is he going to fight it? And why is he going to take so long to see the inevitable?
Well, first of all, if you've ever seen a parent try to drag their screaming, petulant child out of Chuck E. Cheese while they're throwing a temper tantrum, that's akin to what we're working with here. It's basically somebody whose time is up, who is going to throw a temper tantrum because he's a petulant child.
Yeah.
He is also morally void of the ability to be able to admit any wrongdoing. With your analogy before where he was started on third base and then stole first, it's more like he started on third base, tried to steal home, fell down halfway to home, shit his pants, and then threw a temper tantrum that they didn't move home base to where he was laying in his pile of shit.
Right. Like, how do you not change the rules of baseball for me? I'm special.
Right. They cheated.
Yeah.
And it all goes back to his constant rhetoric now that, the day of the election, he tweeted out, "I won, and by a lot," in all capitals, like a child.
Right.
And it all goes back to this, well, if you only counted the legal votes, I would win. And what he means by legal votes are votes for him.
Yeah. And that's a really unsettling thing to have watched unfold. So from my perspective, and I'd really love to know if you agree, because so for anyone watching, David might be the most politically engaged person that I'm friends with. And that's maybe even including me, who I think you all know I am very politically engaged. But I do think that the GOP, specifically Trump's legal team and things like that, I think there was a concerted, active effort from them to cheat and steal this election. I think they just underestimated dramatically how hard they were going to have to cheat. I think they tried to cheat within boundaries that they thought they could fly under the radar with, and I don't know why they thought that, because I'm sorry, if you appoint a postmaster general that is willing to lick your starfish, and then he starts immediately removing a million mailboxes. I think it's not as under the radar as you think it is, but they, I think, tried really, really hard to steal this election for Donald Trump and still fell short, which I think is an absolute repudiation on him. Where do you stand on that?
100%. Well, first you have to unpack the idea that Democrats, generally speaking, try to win elections by getting the most votes, and Republicans, generally speaking, try to win elections by stifling the most votes.
Yeah.
As Donald Trump was quoted saying himself, if everybody voted, Republicans would never win another election in their lifetimes. There is much stronger Democratic sentiment among Americans. It's just that the majority of them just don't get off their ass to vote. They're either disenfranchised or they're just, they just want nothing to do with it. They really don't think that politics affects them, or they've bought into the rhetoric that, one party is exactly the same as another party.
That, what's funny, man? On my little list of questions that I came up with that I thought we should tackle tonight, that was one of them. What do you say to people who say things like, oh, I'm just not into politics?
Well, I ask them if they're into their friends having health care. Are they into, their gay friends having the same rights as the rest of us? Are they into, women not becoming the handmaid's tale? Are they into children being locked in cages? Are they into, tax breaks for billionaires at the expense of the rest of us? It's not necessarily politics, but these things do affect you whether you realize it or not. And if they had succeeded in many of their other efforts, like to take away healthcare from additional 30 million people, I guarantee you some of those 30 million would have been the same people that say, I want nothing to do with politics.
I agree. And then it's funny because you're trotting out some of the bigger things that we have to be thinking about when we're having that conversation. But it would also be just as relevant to go, like, how do you feel about not having lead paint in your house? How do you feel about not having asbestos insulation in your attic? How do you feel about whether or not there are roads between your home and your child's school? How do you feel about whether or not there's a fire department in your town? And all of these are also politics. You can't separate politics from life. You can try, but I think it's privilege to say I'm not into politics. Would you agree?
I would absolutely agree.
We got someone in the chat. We got Kendra in the chat says, anyone tries to make me subservient, they're in for a rude awakening. And I think that's what just happened. I think that there was an attempt by the Trump administration to make America subservient to his will. And ironically, and I'm using the word ironically correctly, ironically, Trump's messaging was trying to paint Joe Biden as several of the things that he is. He tried to paint Joe Biden and the Democratic Party as corrupt cheaters. He tried to paint the Democratic Party as supporting some kind of fascist police state by taking away the will of the American people. He tried to paint Joe Biden as having autocratic dreams of like wanting to be powerful at the expense of other things. And he did all of that even in the primaries to Bernie Sanders and Joe Biden over and over and over again, proving, I think, A, that Trump is really afraid of other old white guys, and B, that Donald Trump likes to project. He likes to project his own flaws onto others.
He absolutely loves to project his own flaws onto others. And it's not like people that support Joe Biden. I'm a Joe Biden supporter. It's not like I think that Joe Biden is this, shining beacon on a hill, a politician that can do no wrong. The guy is a flawed human being. But that's exactly the point. He is a flawed human being. And as you said before with the crime bill, he is capable of admitting when he made a mistake and trying to do something to rectify that. Donald Trump is incapable of admitting any wrongdoing. In his mind, it's with the election, everything else. Either he wins or somebody cheated. Yeah. It's a zero-sum game. There is no eventuality where he loses fair and square. And he firmly believes that. So it comes down to, if he loses, he was cheated. If somebody voted for him, then it was a legal vote. And if somebody voted for Joe Biden, it was an illegal vote.
I mean, can we talk for a second about the hilarity that was his simultaneous protests in two parts of the country with completely opposite messaging, where they're in Arizona going, count the vote, count the vote. And then they're over in Wisconsin and Michigan going, stop the count, stop the count. Donald Trump's message for the last day or two of the election was, look, only count the votes that are for me.
Right. That's exactly what it was. It came down to count the Donald Trump votes. And the funny part is he kind of shot himself in the foot a little bit because historically speaking, Republicans tend to vote more by mail, and he scared them all off of doing it. So if you look at certain states like Ohio, when the polls closed in Ohio, Joe Biden was up by 300,000 votes. It might have even been as many as 400,000. Within an hour, Trump was ahead by over 200,000 because they counted the absentee ballots first.
Yep.
He didn't have any complaints about that.
No.
In the other states where they counted the same day voting first and Trump was way ahead. And then he's like, and then somehow my lead that's what happens. That's called counting votes. That's what counting is.
But he wants to frame it as finding votes. That's what he keeps saying. That's the messaging. Yeah. I don't want them to find votes at 4 a.m. Listen, dude, like if they're there and we start counting them at 4 a.m., it's not finding votes. That's counting votes. That's how democracy works. And like, I am fully aware that we're not really a democracy, but we're trying to be. I'm aware that we're a democratic republic. People love to, conservatives especially, love to hit you over the head with that. We're not actually a democracy. We're a democratic republic. It's a little different. I know, dude. Like, I'm aware. I'm not an idiot. Neither is David. We know this shit.
The goal has always been to head towards a more perfect union. And it is my belief that under Joe Biden, we're at least pointing in the right direction. And I plan to hold him accountable like I've held every president accountable. The difference is I believe he can be held accountable because he can hold himself accountable, which is one of Trump's major, major character flaws, is that he cannot admit to himself or to anybody else wrongdoing, because on his part, that shows weakness. Which
of course.
Is the worst thing anybody
Of course. We're going to say a quick goodnight to Blooms. Thank you for stopping by. I hope you get to catch the replay. Biolanty13, that's our friend Lindsay, says, we are a whole oligarchy. And I agree. We are a plutocracy, which is the same thing. It's ruled by the wealthy. That's how America functions. And that's because we allow extremely wealthy people to have an undue amount of influence over our legislature. And instead of putting laws in place to prevent those things, which is what most other developed nations have done. They've done a lot of work to go, all right, well, your money can't buy you laws. But in America, we're like, hey, laws are for sale. How much you got? And it's the great American capitalist machine.
Right, and then it's a self-serving problem, because the same people that would be in charge of campaign finance reform are the same ones that are getting all the money for their campaigns. And, which one of them wants to be the first one to say, I'm not going to take this corporate money, so that their opponent can then take all of the corporate money and then they can lose. So unless we get enough progressive people into power in the Senate and the House, we're not going to have any campaign finance reform, and we desperately need it.
I agree. We got somebody pointing out accurately that in Arizona, supporters flooded the parking lot claiming a van was unloading illegal votes in the parking lot at the polling place. And it actually turned out to be Fox News unloading their camera gear. And I think that's delicious.
Did you see the part where Trump supporters actually started chanting to attack Fox News because Fox News had the gall to call a state early for Biden that no other network had called? And that was just Trump supporters will turn on Trump.
Yep.
If
they called him Bunker Boy all over 4chan when he did that. Remember when all of the forums, 4chan and 8chan and all that stuff, were calling him Bunker Boy and Bunker Bitch?
Yeah.
I mean, and I think that's a key difference in how the left and the right in America are operating in general. I think by and large, the left, while we do occasionally lionize people, I think you'd have to say that we've lionized Bernie Sanders and we've lionized Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and a few other people have been lionized by the left. The left isn't going to... Your pedestal is not secure. No one on the left gets a free permanent pass. We will hold you accountable. You know what I mean? Like, Biden and Kamala were not my first choice. They were not my second, third, fourth choice. I thought a lot of other candidates were more progressive, and more progressive is what I wanted. But at the same time, you know, it's the analogy of it's not a taxi, it's public transit. You don't get to pick a candidate who's going to take you directly to the destination that you want. That doesn't exist. You're just going to catch the bus that's going closest to the neighborhood you're trying to get to. And right
Yeah.
now, Joe Biden is a bus heading in the right direction, and Donald Trump is like the bus from Speed if it was heading into like the Ace Chemical scene from the second Harley Quinn movie. Like it's a, and it's not even that good, because at least if it was that, Keanu Reeves would be on the bus with you, and that would be comforting. There's nothing comforting. It's like if the movie Speed starred Gary Busey. That's what it feels like to me. How's that analogy grab you, David?
Well, I mean, Gary Busey and Speed certainly go well together. We all know that.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, that's so good, dude. Oh man. So did you see? And I'm curious if you have. I'm curious to get your reaction on it. Have you seen? Mitt Romney was on television yesterday talking about Trump and all of this. And did you happen to see that? Because if you didn't, I'd love to give you some background on what he said, and see how you feel about it.
I certainly saw the bit where he was talking about that Biden should get the cabinet that he wants, assuming that he doesn't, pull anybody from, AOC Bernie territory. But
Right. No, I'm not talking about that.
that was no. Fill me in.
Okay. So the gist of the conversation, Mitt Romney was asked whether he thought this was like a referendum on Donald Trump, and honestly, so everyone brings up guys like Mitt Romney as sort of palatable Republicans, and I don't really particularly find him palatable myself. I think he's as full of shit as the rest of them, because no matter how much he's spoken up and acted like he was Mr. Anti-Trump, look at the voting record. He still towed the line 100% of the time. He still was part of every Senate vote. He voted yes on to confirm Brett Kavanaugh. He voted yes to confirm Amy Coney Barfface, or whatever the hell her name was. I actually know it's Amy Coney Barrett. I just wanted to not justify her by giving her name. But in the conversation, Mitt Romney said that the American people have spoken, and that it's clear to him that it's a referendum on Trump as a person, but not on conservative principles in America. He still thinks the majority of Americans, and I'm not going to tell you what I feel about this, I'm just really going to get your opinion. He thinks the majority of Americans still uphold conservative principles, which is why he thinks they gained a little ground in the House, and why he thinks they're going to hold on to the Senate. And he thinks that's the way of saying, if it had been any other Republican nominee, it would have been a landslide against Joe Biden. It's just people saying, we love Republicans, we just we want a more stable leader. What do you think?
Well, I think it starts with, what I was saying earlier, the fact that, a lot of Democrats don't vote. So I agree with him in one part, that many of the people that came out to vote were in favor of Republican values, which is why you see, them picking up House seats, and you see a lot of there weren't a ton of people coming in that were normally Republican voters that were just pulling the Democratic leader. They were voting, Joe Biden for president, and then flipping to the Republicans for House, for Senate.
Right. Not doing full ticket votes.
Which was a direct repudiation, I believe, of Donald Trump, the person, because otherwise you would have just seen, if people were just fed up with the GOP altogether, and personally, I don't understand how they can't be. But if they were, they would have just flipped or not voted altogether. The fact that they bothered to show up to vote and bothered to flip that presidential vote to the other party, says a lot.
Yeah. So basically, Romney might have a point, and that might mean that the Democratic Party has to work really, really hard to stay active and engaged over the next 2 years, so that we don't see further slip in the midterms. So,
absolutely.
So to anybody who is at any point, whether you're watching this live or whether you're watching this in the future when we're sharing it around, that's a thing to really think hard about, is whether or not the Democratic Party needs to work harder. Donald Trump gained among African Americans, and He gained among women and he gained among Latinos in comparison to 2016. Now, I know that's not apples to apples. We're comparing different turnout pools, and that has an effect. But, I think we're already heading into a difficult couple of years because Mitch McConnell kept his job. And
Well, he
so
hasn't
far,
kept it yet.
he's kept it. He's kept one of his jobs. We hope he won't keep the other. And if he doesn't keep the other, if the remaining Senate seats in Georgia, if the Georgia runoff goes Democrat, we basically should be all kneeling to thank Stacey Abrams at that point, who registered 800,000 Democratic voters in Georgia. But if that doesn't go our way, we're going to have more divided government, and all of Biden's talk of unification is going to fall flat on Mitch McConnell's ears if that's the case. I don't think we could rely on Mitch McConnell to play nice at all. Do you?
No, I mean, I would assume that Mitch McConnell's going to do the same thing he did the day Obama took office and said, when McConnell took control of the Senate again and said, we're not going to do anything for this guy. We're not going to confirm his judges. We're not going to bring any of his votes to the floor. We're just not going to do. I mean, he's labeled himself the Grim Reaper. I mean, you self-label yourself the Grim Reaper, not because you're, a fluffy teddy bear that everybody gets along with.
That's true. Although I do think he made a mistake doing that. I think it's possible that by labeling himself the Grim Reaper, he entered into a sort of Beetlejuicy scenario where he said it one time too many, and now he's slowly dying of rot.
He looks that way.
Yeah, he looks like Senator Palpatine to me. Chancellor Palpatine, Emperor Palpatine. He looks like Palpatine to me. We have a question, and it's from My Lady Wife. My Lady Wife wants to know what you did when the election results were officially announced.
What I did personally?
Yeah, what did you do personally? What was that moment like for you? Like, set the scene, paint a picture. Where were you when you found out, and what did you do?
I happened to be sitting in my living room at the time.
Mm-hmm.
I was watching MSNBC. A swath of votes came in from Pennsylvania, from Philadelphia specifically. That was enough at that moment to have them call the race. I instantly started jumping up and down and screaming, happily screaming.
Yeah, of course.
Texted everybody that I knew.
I got one.
And then I actually shed a couple of tears over it. I feel like for the first time in the last 4 years, I was able to exhale a little bit. I also, over the last 4 years, lost my father, who was very, very heavily into politics, especially liberal politics. And the man couldn't stand Donald Trump, and every day was just waiting for him to get voted out. So there was a part of me that was very happy, and in my head kind of shared that moment with my dad, which also made me a little teary. But it was all happy tears and excitement.
It was a chance to breathe for
yes,
a lot of us.
Exactly. I felt like I'd been holding my breath for 4 years, and finally got to exhale and take in some fresh air.
That's actually that's a great story, and it sounds so much like a lot of other ones that I've heard. Because, in case you somehow missed it, I was leaning on a mailbox in the middle of a rally, live streaming the whole thing, because I, like a psychopath, went 4 days without sleep. And I was trying to explain this to Mel a little bit. This isn't going to make sense, I think, unless your brain works similar to mine, but the first night, I just pulled an all-nighter because I thought the election might get called that night. I thought there was a chance, and I wanted to see. The Palpatine comment got somebody in the chat. Our friend Lindsay is losing it down in the chat a little bit. And then J Maysky 107 says, always in my intentions for Mitch McConnell is a massive stroke. # oops. And I love that. And we also got Doc Rock saying, I'd like to see Beto O'Rourke in a cabinet role. We'll talk about those in just a second. Hold on to that thought. I'm going to tell the rest of my election night story, because part of the deal on the Monday Method is I have to answer all the questions too. So I was on Tuesday, stayed awake all night. And then on Wednesday, I got stubborn and kept going. And by the end of Wednesday, like when the evening was coming along, it had become like a mental war in my head. Like it had become a battle of wills. It was like it was me personally versus Donald Trump. in my head, like in a telepathic battle of wills. It was like sitting there like I was Professor Xavier or something, and trying to will things to go the right way. And I had this fear that if I fell asleep, that I would miss America dying. I would miss the death knell. But if I stayed awake, I would be awake for the triumphant moment when, and I'm not when we enter utopia, just when the rope snaps and we arrest from free fall. That's all it felt like to me. It didn't feel like, hooray, ding dong, the witch is dead, and goodness can roll out over the land. It just felt like I finally got the parachute cord pulled, and we can stop free falling.
That's a lot of how it felt to me. Let's make no qualms about it. Donald Trump is going to do some vile shit over the next 2 months.
Yeah.
And maybe some of the most vile shit of his entire presidency, because he's just going to go out scorched earth. But what we did gain when the election was called was we gained the finish line. We have sight of it now. And that alone gives me some hope. You know, seeing the end in sight, you know, helps me to strengthen my resolve to fight back against that for the next 2 months, and to get involved in the Georgia runoff races, just, you know, so we can really make some serious change.
Yeah, I think Philadelphia County, I think the whole nation knows that Philadelphia County had an outsized, massive impact on this election. I think everybody knows that Philadelphia County and Allegheny County, where Pittsburgh is, were really instrumental in flipping Pennsylvania. And now I think we have to, as Philadelphians, willingly, eagerly pass that sort of torch of like, make this happen to Democratic voters in Georgia, because we see an end game now. We see a finish line for Donald Trump as president. But if we can somehow take Georgia Senate seats, which of course is a very tall order, it's a very, very tall order, but if we could do it, if we could manage that, Kamala Harris would have the tie-breaking vote in the Senate, and the Republicans would not be able to stalemate us. We would be able to actually implement change, and they would not be able to stop us. And the thing that makes that really interesting is roughshod democratic change doesn't look like radicalism in real life. It doesn't look that insane. Like, Republican voters are acting as if we're going to turn it into some kind of socialist police state, which that's not a thing anyway, because they don't understand what the word socialist means. They get really confused because the Nazis used the word socialist, and therefore socialist must mean Nazi. But no, it doesn't. But you know, it's this really interesting thing where you have to ask yourself, like, what are they actually going to lose? Republican voters are not, nothing bad's going to happen to them.
In fact, many of them are going to gain. It's just Trump has done such a good job of vilifying certain keywords or certain, for example, if you ask many Trump supporters what they think about Obamacare, they will rip it to shreds. But if you ask them what they think about the Affordable Care Act, oh, they love the Affordable Care Act. Yeah. The Affordable Care Act is great. Yeah. They don't want to lose their Affordable Care Act coverage, but get rid of Obamacare. It's the exact same thing. And the same thing comes with socialism. Most of them don't realize that they appreciate all the basic tenets of socialism.
Of course, they're benefiting from them all the time.
Called socialism.
Yeah.
Because Donald Trump so desperately wanted to run against Bernie Sanders and socialism that he tried to vilify socialism.
Right. He expected to be running against Bernie Sanders, I think. And I never expected that.
When he couldn't do it, he just decided to label Joe Biden as a socialist, which he is anything but.
No, of course not.
Thankfully, for most of us, due to COVID, they were forced, both sides of the aisle, to adopt some socialist policies. Because, again, you see these people that are like, oh, I hate socialism. Where's my government check? Where's my stimulus?
And I think that's another thing that I find really interesting. And I promise you, if you're watching this as a conservative voter, I'm not trying to paint you specifically with a broad brush. I am just going to observe patterns that I've noticed in my not inconsiderable years of being active in politics. I voted in the last several elections. I've been politically active for well over 15 years at this point. And it's just one of those things where I've noticed that hardcore red voters, most of the issues they're going to bring up are centered on their own needs. It's it's what's going to happen to me and my family. And I'm not even saying that's bad, but it is the first stop of the conversation for a lot of red voters, at least in my experience, where it becomes about how is this going to affect my taxes? How is this going to affect my schools? How is this going to affect departments in my local government? And how is this going to affect these specific social issues that I care about? And when you have the same conversation with hardcore blue voters, and I don't even, actually, maybe red and blue is the wrong term. I think I mean hardcore conservative and hardcore progressive, because blue doesn't necessarily represent, like the Democratic Party doesn't represent a fair swath of the left, at least idealistically. But when you have that conversation with people on the left, don't you find that a lot of the times the conversation begins by talking about the rights of specific marginalized groups? Like, don't you always have that conversation and it becomes, oh, well, I care about LGBTQ rights, or I want to make sure that African Americans are treated differently in this country. And that conversation starts in places like that, whether or not the person you're talking to belongs to those communities, I find.
Well, of course. I mean, it comes down to, the greater good versus, being a selfish person. But to some degree, the problem with the Republican side is it's just perception about what they think will help their family. And in many times, they're just not educated enough with politics to realize that they're voting for people that are, like, look at Mitch McConnell, for example. The people that vote for him, he is actively hurting the people of Kentucky, one of the poorest states in the nation, with his policies.
Yeah.
He's actually voting to take away their health care. Yeah. He's voting to take away their welfare. He's voting to take away their Social Security. But they're still voting for him.
And I think it's because they don't know.
They have a perception that they're going to do better under the Republicans. So in some ways, what the Republicans are good at is branding these ridiculous talking points to a point where they repeat them over and over ad nauseum,
and it
then
becomes
they're just
true
back to them.
Yeah, and I think that's true. Like another great, and we have the question to get to, which we're going to get to in just a second, because I see a question from LDibs11. If you can't guess who that is, yeah. In any case, I find it interesting that you could ask a lot of voters in places like rural Kentucky. If you ask them, and this has been done by sociologists, if you ask them who they think the majority of people on welfare are, they will 100% of them are going to respond that it's the African American community, when in fact something like I don't remember the exact numbers, but something like 2/3 or more of welfare users are rural whites. And again, that's not a dig, that's not a knock. I think welfare is a good thing. I think I think there should be a social safety net below which we do not allow Americans to fall.
Oh, 100% there should. And the other thing is, it's not just 2/3 of them are lower income white folks. They're lower income white folks that still vote Republican. They're voting against their own interests.
Yeah, it's a lack of critical thinking skills. Here's the interesting question. We're gonna we have one from Mel the Pixie as well, but I don't know with him what that is. Oh, okay. Let's take Mel's first because it's on topic, and then we're gonna pivot sharply for Lauren. But Mel says you mentioned scorched earth, so I'm wondering how bad do you think it could get?
I honestly don't believe that there is a red line for him that he will not cross. I think it really only depends on if his enablers at any point decide to put their foot down and say enough is enough. Unchecked, I believe that there is nothing that he won't do to try to either retain power illegally or to just, I mean, even today when he fired Mark Esper, the defense secretary, he's just going to start firing people left and right from the government that he doesn't like. So we could expect to see a lot of that. We could expect to see a lot of pardons of vile people, and maybe some pretty inhumane policies that he tries to enact by
executive order.
But there is only so far he can go if the people surrounding him decide to check him, which, who knows? It hasn't happened yet, but maybe in the lame duck period, we'll see something new.
Yeah, that would be nice. I'm hoping. All right, so here's a hard pivot, and it's a tough question. I'm gonna let you go first, but I have thoughts on this as well. Quick pivot to the new VP, says Lauren. I'd like to know your honest thoughts on Kamala Harris. She's historically a conservative who went well off script in her own presidential platform and now is working in tandem with essentially a centrist Democrat. You want to take a stab at that?
Yeah, I think, a lot of people have issue with Kamala Harris because of some of her policies when she was serving as the AG of California.
Yeah.
Which some of them, were not on my personal level things that I agreed with. But, I have yet to find any politician that I fully agree with 100% of the time.
Sure.
Politicians are not perfect entities. They're not, we tend to hold them up on this, this pedestal, but they're just people like us. And in fact, politicians with flaws are more human to me than the ones that, hide behind this veil of perfection. With Kamala Harris, I think it's really, really super important that we got a woman into that office and that we got a woman of color into that office.
Yeah.
Just for the well-being of the youth of this country. It was the same thing when, young African-American girls could look at Michelle Obama and say, oh, look, she's in the White House. She looks like me. But she was still, first lady. It's a little different. Now they can look at the vice president and say, wow, I can do that. That she looks like I look. She represents that. Now, when it comes to her policies and things of that nature, I think there's certainly some room for improvement.
Big time.
Because there's certainly room for improvement from Biden. As I said before, her working with Biden is kind of like a centrist wet dream. My hope had been that he was going to maybe go with somebody a little more liberal, but a lot of people did at exit polling said that they came out to vote specifically for Kamala Harris. So, I mean, if you're going to let the ends justify the means, then I think it was a good choice. Because it got us to where we needed to be. Like any other politician, I think we need to keep them squared up and fully accountable.
Yeah.
And she doesn't just get a free pass because she's a woman of color that's, trailblazing. She still has to be held accountable to the voters. And if her policies and the things that she's fighting for are something that I don't believe in, I'll be just as quick to speak up about that as I was against, Donald Trump and Mike Pence and their policies. So on its face, I'm okay with the choice.
I think that's a fair assessment. I would have placed Kamala Harris pretty low on my order of preference in the Democratic primary. Maybe only one or two up from the bottom. But I will also say that there was only one Democratic primary aspirant who was a deal breaker to me, and the only deal breaker in the collection for me was Tulsi Gabbard. Anyone other than Tulsi Gabbard, I think I would have been willing to give a shot because of what you said, because politicians most of them turn in the wind a little bit, and most of them are creatures of expedience, and I think that's true of Kamala Harris, and I do think that her career as Attorney General in California was a net loss for the African American community that she purported to represent. I agree. I think she did some problematic things. I think as a senator, her voting record is better, but still quite centrist, but better. And really, I mostly only care about the voting record, and more. I care about that more than. I'm trying to think about the right. You know what the right analogy for this is? It's like how I care about the action, not the word most of the time. And the good analogy for that is I don't care that J.K. Rowling said Dumbledore is gay. That doesn't count for shit for the LGBT community in terms of diversity or visibility in the Harry Potter universe, because it's it's ex post facto. It's not real. It doesn't exist until unless you had Jude Law making out with Johnny Depp in the first Fantastic Beasts movie. It's not canon. It's just a thing that you said. Whereas what you actually did was deliberately keep that character closeted for 7 books. So it's wanting the appearance of liberalism without wanting to do the work of liberalism. And I don't know that I think Kamala has done that. I think she's done the work of centrism as a senator. And centrism in America looks like liberalism because America. So, okay, I'm going to put my hands on the screen so I can do this analogy. I talk about this a lot. Let me see if I can. All right, that one's there. This one's here. Okay. So that's I hope that's the right for you guys. We're going to call this side the right. We're going to call this side the left. And what's supposed to happen is that here in this is supposed to be the center. But what's actually happened is that the center in America is about here. And that's a thing called the Overton window. And I've explained this on the show before. The reason that happens is because the 2 major parties, the left, who are actually sort of center to center left, and the right, who are very, very right, have had a long conversation in which the right would go, hey, meet me in the middle. And Democrats would foolishly meet them in the middle. And then the Republicans would step back. And then they would go, hey, meet me in the middle. What are you doing? And so that kept inching things this way until finally the center is about here. And Kamala Harris probably falls in the real center. Kamala Harris would be a centrist in other developed nations, but she is on the left in America because we've lost sight of what the left and the right are actually supposed to mean. And a really interesting side note that I love your reaction to, David, is that do you know the origins of the left-right do you know why they're called the left and the right? Why the left is liberal and the right is conservative?
It's just as far as I know, it's their seated location within the House chamber or the
right,
Senate
but it
chamber.
didn't start in America. Do you know where it started? It's a great.
I guess in England, if not in America.
No, and it's a great story. First off, hi Kate Nix, and if I'm missing any other questions, keep getting on me for them. But we're gonna jump off of this one in a little bit to take a question from Joe that I am seeing. But the left-right thing began during the French Revolution, because when the assembly in France was meeting, those who consider themselves revolutionaries, i.e. people who wanted to depose the monarch, began sitting together on the left side of the chamber, and those who were supporting the monarchy were sitting on the right side of the chamber. So literally, in the initial analogy of left and right, the right were demonstrably the bad guys. Now, of course, the left were also bad guys, because everybody was a bad guy in the French Revolution. You become a bad guy when you get really into cutting people's heads off. But that's where the left-right analogy started. So I guess in short, to try to sum up my answer to Lauren's question, I settled for Biden-Harris. I'm not jazzed for Biden-Harris. Biden-Harris was a way to arrest free fall, and I think we're going to be quite lucky if in their first term we can undo the lion's share of the damage that Trump has done to America. And that's all I'm expecting and asking of them. I intend to hold them accountable. I intend to scrutinize their administration. And I intend to give them absolutely zero ground when it comes to remaining active. And I think that that's the prevailing opinion among my echo chamber, if you want to call it that. Like, among the people that agree with me, which is a fairly large number of people because I'm in so many online communities, the prevailing opinion is that. Like, the prevailing opinion is Biden-Harris are centrists who have made some mistakes that we don't agree with, and we have to hold them accountable moving forward. But thank fuck that they're not Trump.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
I hope that answers the question successfully. The question from Joe Maskey, we have Let's Jump Off That. Did we dodge a bullet not having Gabbard as a VP nominee? Yes.
Oh, 100%.
Yes.
Gabbard is not a Democrat.
I don't even know if I think Gabbard is a Republican. I'm not entirely convinced that Gabbard isn't a foreign asset. That's real. I really think that's possible.
There's entirely a possibility that she, like Jill Stein, is a foreign asset.
Right. I think that's absolutely possible. Oh man, and Jill Stein brings up a fun question. So Jill Stein was regularly decried in 2016 as a spoiler, and I think there's some merit to that. I don't know that you could. I don't know that it's possible to mathematically prove it, because just, taking her votes and going, if these were all Hillary votes, blah blah blah, you can't guarantee that they all would have been. But because I think a fair amount of them would have just stayed home. But I'm hearing a lot of people say that 2020's Jill Stein is Joe Jorgensen, but that she worked against Trump in the same way that Jill Stein worked against Hillary. You think there's any merit to that?
There could be. I mean, if you look at some of the states, where the margin was so thin, Jorgensen still managed to get in a lot of those, 1% to 2% of the vote. And you're talking about states where the difference was less than 1% of the vote. So, I mean, it's certainly
possible.
It's reasonable to believe that could have taken place. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I haven't crunched the numbers enough to, to really dive into it, but it absolutely on its face is something that, is believable.
Right. And as I think I've said a couple of times, you and I are gifted amateurs at best. We're people who care, not people who should be considered experts on this stuff by any means. There are smarter Hi, Mel. There are smarter political minds in the world than us. There are people who have more experience in these fields than us. This is just, if you were interested in our take, here it is. And I think there's value in that. I think that we represent a fair sized sort of swath of America, probably fall pretty close to where David and I fall. And even to that note, David and I are not quite a complete echo chamber for each other anyway, which I find interesting. We've had a lot of conversations. I think we agree far more than we don't, but from time to time we might have nuanced differences of opinion on things. It's not like, it's not like one of us is radical left and one of us is moderate or something like that. But we have a question here that says, "What's your take on Pence having condemned Trump's words after election night and then disappeared?" I wasn't actually aware that happened. Did that happen?
I wouldn't call it a full-on condemnation, but
I missed something. Whoa.
Mike Pence is a political creature. He's will say what he needs to say when he needs to say it to save his own ass. So I put no weight on that whatsoever.
I agree.
I
agree. I think Pence is scum. I think he's one of the worst active politicians in America. I think he has a deep seated sense of entitlement with women. I think he has incredibly problematic views on literally everything. And I think we all saw at the vice presidential debate that he serves the forces of darkness, and the flies can tell. So
yeah, I mean, absolutely. The fact that Mike Pence lost his job to a woman of color is beautiful. I mean, if there was anybody for him to lose his job to, I mean, aside from her also being gay on top of that, it's just perfect.
Yeah, so I think the number of boxes Kamala Harris checks off is kind of interesting. She's an African American. She's a South Indian. She's a child of immigrants. She's the first woman elected to the office, and I think it is important that we acknowledge how valuable those things are, whether or not she ends up being a perfect politician. She is a trailblazer. She did just smash a glass ceiling, and as a guy, so my goddaughter is a young woman of color whose last name is Harris. I feel that really, really, really strongly. That's the silver lining that I'm fighting toward. Really, really great comment in the chat that needs to be called out, and I want your thoughts on it. Kate Nix says, "I like that Biden's transition website is buildbackbetter.com. It really acknowledges how low the bar is."
Oh, it absolutely. I mean, Build Back better than, is that better than Trump? Because that bar is buried 6 feet deep.
Yeah, that bar is subterranean, and Donald Trump has a digging team hard at work for ways to get under it. Whoa.
Yeah, I mean, and also I feel like it's kind of a dig at the "Make America Great Again" slogan.
Well, I
You
mean,
know,
did you see his very specific dig against that? He's wearing
against "Make America Great." Which one in particular?
his hat. Biden was wearing a hat. So Trump wears a hat that says "Make America Great Again" 45. Biden has begun wearing a blue hat that says 46 and says "We just did."
Oh yeah, I've seen that one. That's
Love
great.
that. Love that. Don't think Biden represents the kind of progressive candidate that I want, but okay, and some have said that Donald Trump's main superpower is making George W. Bush look good. I think that's a valuable, in addition to that being funny, isn't that a valuable conversation to have on some level?
Well, look, if you were to tell me, David, I'm going to punch you in the stomach, that is not appealing. If you were going to tell me, hey, David, I could punch you in the stomach or I could shoot you in the dick with this gun, I'm going to say, please punch me in the stomach.
That's vivid.
So it's
That's
all a basis for
vivid.
comparison. I mean, punch in the stomach sounds terrible right now, but if it's between that and getting my dick shut off,
Yeah, I mean,
punch-
it's like Jimmy Kimmel said. Jimmy Kimmel in his monologue said Joe Biden could show up at my house every morning to key my car and piss in my pool. It's still no contest which of those men I'm going to vote for. And that is a relevant conversation. But my point was this. So I have a friend. I'm not gonna name my friend, but I have a friend who has met George Bush a fair amount of times, and I've met George Bush twice. Bush, this is Junior. This is W. And so W is a war, and for my money, W is a war criminal. His war did not adhere to international standards and was unjust, and he was emphatically bad for this country. But, and this is an important but, I think he tried. I think he cared. I think he fucked up almost everything that could possibly have been fucked up. I think he was an inept and occasionally short-sighted and even occasionally cruel politician. But I don't believe that he set out to be president so he could screw people. I don't think he set out to be president specifically so he could damage the nation or our standing. I think he tried his best. I think he was incompetent and foolish, but tried his best. I do not think you can say that about Donald Trump. I don't think he cared. And my favorite way of pointing this out is look at George Bush on day one, and then look at Bush on his last day in office. Just white. Look at Obama. Same thing. The office aged them. The office took a visible toll on them. The COVID is the only thing that took a toll on Trump.
Real hair and real skin,
Real hair and real skin. Yeah.
If they had worn, ridiculous amounts of makeup and, fake hair and had that all teased,
I just don't think the presidency, I don't think that for George W. Bush, I don't think the presidency was a means to a very selfish end. I think he went out to become president because he wanted to and thought he could do good. I think that. I think he was wrong, but I think that. And at this point, it's better to have a president who just wants to do good. Like, I'll take that. I'll take a president who wants to do more than enrich his own companies and engage in blatant, unapologetic nepotism with his family members and engage in blatant, unapologetic enriching of himself through the offices of the president. Do you know how much money we have paid Trump's resorts because of the Secret Service needing to be there when he is there? The
Yes,
Secret Service needs to
disgusting.
rent from his hotels. They need to rent golf carts every time they go to Mar-a-Lago. They have to rent out whole blocks of rooms every time they go somewhere. Do you think it's a coincidence that Donald Trump only ever goes to places owned by his organization? Of course not.
He tried to have the G8 summit at his Doral Country Club. I mean, come
Exactly.
on.
So he's enriched himself to the tune of millions. And I don't think you could say that George Bush set out to do those things. I don't think you could say. So I think it is true that he makes George W. Bush look good in comparison. And since Biden looks really good in comparison to George W. Bush, I'm considering it like a +2 reversal in Uno. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I think if we were going to try to compare Trump to anybody, that it would be almost more fair to throw him back at Bush's VP than Bush himself, who I really do believe was out to do nefarious shit
I agree.
to enrich himself and those around him.
I agree. I think that Cheney was a political operative who was actively seeking to. I don't think he was actively seeking to do harm. I think he was actively seeking to do good for himself and didn't care about the costs, which is the same thing. I mean, it's splitting hairs at that point. There is a small difference. Lauren says he did try. George W.'s entire presidency is that video of him trying to put on a disposable raincoat at the inauguration. Good intentions, poor outcome. I think I would agree. I it's not the progression, and we got a comment here that says the progression of Reagan to George Herbert Walker Bush to George W. Bush to Trump is fascinating. How much can we get away with self-serving behavior under the guise of public interest while drying up education so our voters are dumb and poor and we can then inflate our wealth? I don't know if I think it was that cohesively planned, but I do think that's a fair assessment of how it's worked out. There's a lot of enriching the self at the expense of others that's gone, and it's not like you could act like the Democratic Party isn't guilty of sins of this nature as well. Of course they are, but I think the difference is that the Democratic Party is willing to be held accountable and actually cares what their constituents think. Whereas I think
and it's also when you take it back to socialism, I mean,
Yeah.
we've had socialism. We've had socialism in the last 4 years. We just have socialism for billionaires and corporations.
Yeah.
I pay out of my taxes subsidies to Walmart, basically.
Yeah. No, I mean,
the
literally.
billionaires, you got guys like Bezos not paying any taxes. You do have socialism. It's just Republicans want socialism for the wealthy, and Democrats tend to skew towards more
Socialism for the working
policies
classes.
For working class, exactly.
Yeah. I mean, like you could really pinpoint that just in the coronavirus response. The GOP redirected hundreds of millions of dollars that were intended for smaller businesses toward larger businesses, and they put a lot of what we call pork in their bill. And pork is what you call money that's being sent places that are advantageous to the people who are sending the money. It's going, all right, we're going to approve $1 trillion, and I'm going to decide to send it to all my friends for kickbacks. And a lot of that happened. And we got $1,200, and that was supposed to get us through the year. And then you look at the bills that were on the table from, the people that Trump likes to call Nasty Nancy and Lion Chuck, et cetera, Little Adam or whatever. Those people put out a bill to try to give us $2,000 a month until the coronavirus was gone.
Which is what every other civilized nation did. I mean, in Canada, they got $2,000 a month to stay home. In France, in England, in Italy. And that was the whole thing. I mean, Trump was like, oh, we have to get back to work to save the economy. No, what you have to do is pay people to stay at home, to abide by the rules. And that's how you kind of, stifle down the virus. His whole thing was, we have to reopen so that the billionaires can keep being billionaires.
Right.
At the expense of everybody else.
Other nations believed rightly that it was unavoidable that the economy would suffer for lives. And Trump's America said that lives should suffer for the economy. He believed that the economy, the almighty buck, was more important than the lives. And it wasn't.
And he even had some of his sycophants to the point where they were like, "Oh, I'll die from coronavirus if it helps the president's cause."
Yeah.
Like I'm happy to die of corona. Look at Herman Cain.
I know. Oh God, Herman Cain, man. And now the only other black guy that likes Donald Trump has also tested positive for COVID. We don't count Lil Pump and 50 Cent or whoever. They're. I have it on personal authority from my friends of color that their black cards have been revoked. Joe Maskey thinks that it might be a deliberate a deliberate plan to have poorly funded education to convince voters that it works in the interest of Republicans to keep their voters uninformed and uneducated.
Well, look, it does, because the right has also done a great job of vilifying education in
Sure,
this.
coastal elites and the intellectual elites
And a lot of that goes to the fact that we developed a country where, in order to get ahead, it's thought that you need a college degree. But then we priced the majority of Americans completely out of being able to obtain a college degree. So you set this benchmark, and then you tell people that the benchmark is unattainable, and then you vilify the people that did obtain that benchmark.
Right.
And it's a good theory. So you have people, when I was coming up, people used to make fun of you if you used poor grammar. Now people make fun of you for using proper grammar.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like, oh, what? Oh, okay, grammar.
Oh, fancy Harvard boy. Yeah, right. That's true.
And it's become a vilification of education. And the right has done a very good job with that. And so it does benefit them to keep people uneducated, or otherwise, it would be pretty easy to enact free community college and the like.
All right, this brings me to a point that I wanted to get to that I think is really interesting. And if you're watching in the chat, please share your opinions with this. Tell us what you think of this. And also, if you're in the chat, feel free to share the link out on your social media and get some more people involved. Because I only, this is my job now. So help me. We'll talk at the end of the show about some stuff that's upcoming for me. I hope you guys stick around until the end. But here's an important question: do you think it is time to unify and coalition build, or do you not? And why or why not?
Personally, I think it's always time to unify and coalition build, but it for me personally, I'm willing to not forget, but to forgive to a point. But sure, that comes with a level of repentance.
You're willing to allow atonement?
And atonement. If somebody came to me and said, hey, look, I supported Trump. I now realize I was wrong. I realize how badly that scarred a whole lot of people, how badly those policies hurt a bunch of people. I really, feel terrible about it. And I'd like to try to make amends for it. Conversation open. Yeah. But if it's the people that supported Trump for 4 years, called me a snowflake, told me to go fuck my feelings and everything else, that now want to sing Kumbaya because their candidate lost, hard pass. So I do think coalition building is important, but I do think that if we're going to build a coalition across the aisle beyond, just the Republicans that were sick of Trump's bullshit, that it's going to take some repentance from the other side.
I think I agree. Do you think that we're likely to see any of that though?
I think we're likely to see a little bit of it.
You want to take a guess as to who we might see that from in the say in the Republican Senate?
Well, that really is going to come down to whether Republicans or Democrats have control of the Senate, because they're all terrified. I mean, you saw even today, like Susan Collins became the third Republican senator to tweet out congratulations to Joe Biden, right? Which is, stepping outside of lockstep of the party. Now, Susan Collins, just won re-election and
a state that went completely for Biden.
It's a classic example of watch what she does, not what she says, because she, talks a mean game and then votes in lockstep with Trump.
Yeah, we people have pinned their hopes on Susan Collins in a couple of votes in the Senate over the course of the last couple of years, and she, people have said, oh, we only need this many Republicans to flip, and I think at this point it's become clear that at least where we stood in 2020, no Republicans were ever flipping. The last Republican who actually had the balls to do that was John McCain, and even he didn't do it all the damn time. I got plenty of instances of votes John McCain cast that were, I think, just terrible. Although I will say, I think that if there is an afterlife and John McCain could see America right now, he would be laughing his ass off that the state he served for so long flipped against Trump, probably at least in part because Trump made fun of his memory so much.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, you're talking about a state that now has two Democratic senators, which has always been a vastly red state.
Yeah.
And you're looking at Georgia too. Georgia could wind up as another red state that has a vastly has two Democratic senators. And then even to Joe's comment earlier about Mitch McConnell having a stroke or a heart attack, I mean, Kentucky, for being a very conservative state, has a Democratic governor, which means,
Lexington,
not
and
God forbid something bad happens to Mitch McConnell, he can be replaced with a Democratic alternative, which is, what the Democratic governor of Kentucky would do in that instance. So
Joe also thinks that Pat Toomey would rather quit than eat crow, although he thinks it's a leap to say so. I don't think that's a leap at all. I think that's a fair assessment of Pat Toomey's character. You?
Yeah, I mean, look at guys like Paul Ryan.
Yep.
Exact same thing. Oh, he was the Speaker of the House, but then, no, I'm just going to bow out of public. Say I want to spend time with my family because I've lost, the power I had in Washington.
Lindsay, you're correct. A bunch of indigenous folks did go out and rock that vote in Arizona. It is very true. The indigenous vote was an instrumental part of it. And then also that, again, there's this perception that America is mostly red because of that stupid electoral map that everyone sees all the time, that doesn't take population into account. Like, acres don't vote. Cows don't vote. People vote. And people live in cities. And that is why cities can flip entire states in the other direction. Pennsylvania has like 5 blue counties. And they flipped the entire state because 8.5 million of the 12 million people in Pennsylvania live in those 5-6 counties. That's what happens.
Yeah. And I mean, as a committee person, I can tell you how it went in my ward. My ward, the 21st ward, is one of the largest wards in Philadelphia. We had 3,200 more votes for Joe Biden than we did for Hillary Clinton on the Democratic side. So
that's amazing.
A pretty substantial increase. On the Republican side, Trump did get more votes, but he only got 100 more votes. So we're talking about, from my ward alone, we netted an additional 3,100 votes for Biden.
That's amazing.
In 2016, it's incredible. And that's because we were very on point with how we targeted people. We started by targeting all the people that had not voted in the last election, followed by all the people that had not voted in the primary, followed by all the people that were, had voted, but, didn't have a stellar voting record of being a super voter being somebody that's voted in over 70% of elections that they were eligible to vote in. And then very lastly, we targeted them because we knew that the likelihood was they were already coming out to the polls. We sent postcards, we made phone calls, we drove people to the polls or got them rides that needed them. We knew that every single vote out of Philadelphia was going to count heavily because it was going to help swing the state from Pennsylvania back to Pennsylvania.
Pennsylvania. Woo. Okay, I'm going to put you on the spot real quick. What if you were emperor of the universe, and you were controlling American democracy in 2020? You had superpowers or whatever. To what end would you use Gritty? Because we have somebody in the chat who wants Gritty to hunt Donald Trump out of the White House, like it's some kind of horror movie. And if you had the power to just warp reality and do whatever you wanted with Gritty, up to and including making Gritty more than a person in the costume, what would you do?
Well, first of all, I do like the idea of Gritty hunting Donald Trump for sport, but I would take it a step further and say that we should put it on pay-per-view and use the proceeds to pay down some of the national debt.
Hey.
I would happily shell out $49.99 for the opportunity to watch Donald Trump be hunted and removed from the grounds of the White House by...
I don't think I'd even pirate that. I don't think I would
because,
pirate that. I would pay for that. I would pay actual money for that. And then okay, is it to the death?
well, hopefully.
I
I
mean,
mean,
yeah,
look, nobody out oranges Gritty.
that's what I'm
And the
saying.
fact that Donald Trump would even have the appalling attempt to out orange Gritty.
That's a good point. You know, maybe it's gone too far to be even to the death. Maybe we have to take a line from The Princess Bride and say it's got to be to the pain.
I would much prefer to the pain. I think death is too good for him at this point.
Yeah, to the pain. Leave him with his perfect ears in a jail cell.
And yet, not even necessarily to the pain, but for him to the shame.
To the shame, because that is death to a malignant narcissist.
It absolutely, and that, to have him end his life being disgraced and called a loser, and all of the things that to him are literally worse than death, is really what I'm aiming for.
All right, and put you on the spot again. Do you have any dream cabinet picks?
Dream cabinet picks.
And if you don't, could you make up a couple for us for fun?
I would like to see Liz Warren potentially on the cabinet, but you run into the trouble there of
losing her in the Senate.
Massachusetts having a Republican governor, and if she gives up her seat, that could be problematic.
Hold on, pause. We got a brilliant comment from the chat. Hamey83, that's Danny. Danny says, I would rather the 12th District of New York meet him at the back door of the White House while he's trying to sneak out. Wow.
I'm here for that.
That would be, to anyone who doesn't know how brutal that would be like, I mean, I can't even think of it. Like, that'd be like watching the Passion of the Christ from an Iron Maiden. Like, that would be bad. That would hurt. That would be brutal. The 12th District of New York does not. And somebody brought this up on the news. I can't remember who it was, but somebody said, isn't it funny? Like, live your life in a way that when you get fired, your hometown does not throw a citywide party. Try to live your life in a way that when you leave your position, the entire population of the place you called home for decades, they don't throw a party and destroy piñatas that look like you. Try to live your life that way. I can't imagine somebody having earned the kind of unpopularity Trump has earned in New York City. But he did. And he did it for years. And New Jersey feels the same way about him, and Philadelphia feels the same way about him. You want to brag that you went to school here?
That's why he's relocated now to Florida. Florida's now his permanent address.
Yeah. And how long till they get sick of him, I wonder. All right, wait, here we go. My dream cabinet picks. Let me think if I had a good one. So I'm not going to say my dreams because I don't really have I don't like to make opinions like that, but I will say some popular ones I've heard. Some people have said they would like to see him give a cabinet position to Pete Buttigieg. How do you feel about that? And if so, what position?
I would not be opposed to Pete Buttigieg just on the basis that he's smart, he's young, he's a former member of the military, and he's an openly gay member of his political party, which is something that you could certainly use in a cabinet. If you're trying to have a cabinet that's indicative and representative of the people, I would find it hard to believe in 2020 that you wouldn't have an openly LGBTQ member of that cabinet.
I would agree.
And also,
I think he's also palatable to Republicans because he is also not that radically left. Like, he's not that seriously left. He's kind of a middle of the road politician as well, just a compassionate and well-spoken one.
I agree.
See, and Biolenti13 in our chat just said the same thing. It's not a terrible choice, even though he's kind of a bootlicker. And he is. He is not. He's not a real progressive, but again, conscientious, cares, and can be driven left by a constituency that wants him to go left. I think. I think all of them could be dragged left by a constituency if allowed. If we vote, if progressives vote, things go progressive. That's really the end. That's really the end all be all of it. I've heard. So we have somebody saying Beto. What do you think of Beto O'Rourke for the cabinet, and where?
I'm not so sure about Beto O'Rourke for the cabinet. I think if anything, Beto O'Rourke would be better served still trying to win a Senate seat in Texas, or working, more locally behind the scenes. If it came down to a choice of Buttigieg and O'Rourke for me, I would definitely go with Buttigieg on that one. I just don't see Beto bringing that much to the table outside of the fact that he seems to have his finger on the politics of Texas.
What about
But
Stacey Abrams? We've got a vote in the chat for Stacey Abrams. They're
I
saying
love Stacey Abrams.
They're saying for Secretary of State.
Yeah, I mean, she's certainly diplomatic. I mean, if you look at the fact that
I think she's qualified.
Wholeheartedly cheated out of becoming the governor of Georgia.
Yeah.
And instead of being bitter about it or complaining,
she went to work.
Doubled down and went to work and got it done, man.
I like her for Secretary of State. That would get my vote. I could also see her, because she's such a community organizer, I could see her taking over for Ben Carson in housing and urban development. I could see her taking any number of roles. I think she's a proven organizer, a proven coalition builder. She's deeply qualified. She's deeply passionate. And to your point, she checks off the box of visible diversity in the cabinet, which I think is important. It's not lip service. It's not American fan service. It's a real thing we need. We need young people of color and young people from the LGBT community and young indigenous people to be able to look at the government and people in positions of power and go, they look like me. I could do that. That's so important. That's Absolutely. How we change.
If you could see my phone, which you can't, but
now
if that's
I can.
Not reason,
Gritty.
If that's not reason enough to see Stacey Abrams with Gritty, then
you know what's funny, man?
I don't know.
Gritty is such an institution. I'm not even a big sports fan. But I swear to you, I will buy and proudly wear all the Gritty merchandise. And I just don't even care necessarily that much about the Flyers. Like, I do in the sense that, like, I'm from Philly, but I'm not a sports guy, and I'm not a sports guy. It's sports
Gritty
ball.
isn't just limited to the Flyers. Gritty is the poster child of the anti-establishment movement.
That's what I'm saying. Gritty has somehow completely transcended his origins already, and I love that. I refer to myself now. Somebody made a joke in my chat and called me the Gritty City Bard. And that's on all of my messaging now. That's like my number one piece of branding. Gritty City Bards is a line of merchandise I sell now. I am so here for that.
I'm also not saying that I would necessarily want to see a porno starring Gritty and Ivanka Trump, but I'm also not saying that I would turn it off if it were on my television.
So Gritty playing Donald Trump, who would you cast in that adult film to play, I'm sorry, I'm blanking on her name, Stormy Daniels? Who would you cast as Stormy Daniels? Would you think Stormy Daniels would come out of retirement to do that scene with Gritty as Donald Trump?
I believe that she would. She's a, consummate professional.
I think so. A consummate professional, and also completely willing to breach, that sounded like a dirty word in context, but I meant contracts. To breach contracts for the greater good of America.
And look, if you're willing to have sex with Donald Trump, you're willing to have sex with anything. Let's be honest.
Yeah, I think Gritty is a definite come up from that.
Oh, yeah.
I think without a doubt. Like, come on, guys. Sound off in the chat. If you had a choice to, like, have Donald Trump, like, kiss you on the mouth, or Gritty just go to Pound Town on you, where are you coming down on that? Hey, Gritty, let's go. Just, be gentle. I'm fragile.
I don't know if Gritty does gentle.
I would still go with Gritty. Like, bring it on. Let's go. I don't even know. I don't know anything about Gritty's gender. I don't know what that genital situation would be like, but I would roll those dice, because kissing Donald on the puckered anus that we legally have to call his mouth is not acceptable. It's not acceptable. I can't do it.
No, it is. Have you ever seen that meme of the cat drawn over his face and the
everyone in the chat's calling us sick and twisted right now, and I'm all about it. We're being dragged in my own chat for having taken the conversation there. And Joe Maskey says, Donald Trump kissing him on the mouth or Gritty going to town. Either way, he's fucking dead. Good night. I'll remember you all in therapy. All right. This was worth it. You all have heard worse, and you can take it. You're strong, Lamplighters. I believe in you. And then Jen Lee comes in saying it's all in the hips. Good Lord. Okay. Let's ask a serious question. As a guy who benefits from white privilege, which we both do, I'm aware that that you and I both have intersectionality, but that it's not necessarily immediately visible on the surface what that intersectionality is. So for all intents and purposes, we gain all the benefits of straight white maledom in America. Would you agree?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. As a white guy in America, what is your take on how we got to this point? Like, to the point where Donald Trump was able to not only be elected, but able to gain, what was it, 68 million votes?
I think it's sheer racism. It's, he's done I'm not going to call it a good job, but he's done an effective job of turning groups of people against each other instead of against the group of people in power that they should be against. So, white people's problems are caused by Mexicans. White people, Mexicans are coming to take your jobs. Oh, this is Muslims' fault. This is, anything other than, turning the blame to the people that deserve the blame. And, we've always been an inherently racist country. I mean, there's no denying that. We had slavery. We abolished slavery, and then we got Jim Crow, which is, almost just as racist.
I personally know women who were not allowed to drink at certain water fountains. It was not that goddamn long ago.
Yeah, my mother in Delaware grew up in a segregated school. I mean, it's and she's in her early 70s, so it's not like, it hasn't happened in our parents' lifetime as well as ours. But, I think the way that we got here is just there's a large racist component to the country, and to make no mistake, Donald Trump didn't make anybody racist. He just emboldened the ones that already were. Yeah. There weren't people that woke up one day and decided that they were going to hate minorities because Donald Trump hates minorities. They already hated minorities. They just felt emboldened to say it now out loud.
But wouldn't you say that he also did increase the number? I think he increased the number of racists in this country, because I think in addition to emboldening people who already blamed minorities for everything that had gone wrong in their life, by openly blaming minorities for things that were going wrong in people's lives, you don't think he turned more people racist who were maybe like the pump was already primed, but they didn't think of themselves as racist or weren't actively racist?
That could have been their tipping point, but they were already skewing towards racist. They weren't people that woke up one morning fighting for civil rights, and then Donald Trump got elected, and they were like, fuck Mexicans.
I agree.
I don't think it went down like that.
Trump, two people in our chat are currently having a conversation where they say that Trump gave them a megaphone. He gave them the right to not feel bad, to not feel shame for the hatred that was already in their hearts, and then it thus emboldened them to let that hate out of their hearts. I think that's absolutely accurate. I don't think that there's even necessarily a way to gainsay that.
Yeah, no, not only did he it wasn't just that he turned a blind eye to it. He actually
fanned the flames. Yeah, he was. I mean, I think in what is an incredibly apropos analogy for Donald Trump, given that he is a big puffing blowhard, he was a bellows on the fire of racism in America for sure, and I think will continue to be until whatever disposal becomes of him. I don't even think leaving office is going to end that. Trumpism isn't going away just because Trump isn't going to be president anymore.
No, it's not. If you almost compare it to his handling of the coronavirus, if he had just done nothing surrounding coronavirus, it would have been bad enough. If he had just said, I'm not doing anything. But he actively worked to make it worse. He
Yeah.
vilified wearing masks. He vilified social distancing. He vilified, staying at home even
He
when the
broke
virus
people's
was.
trust in the World Health Organization. He broke trust with Dr. Fauci. Yeah, you're right. He shattered our ability to do this right on purpose.
And he did the same thing with racism. It wasn't that he just said, "Oh, okay, those people are racist. I'm not going to say anything about it." He actively, hearkened to their cause and said, "Oh, you guys are justified in everything that you're feeling. Let's bond together and put an end to this." And
Right.
it
So
it a lot further than I would have,
so part
thought
two
that
of the
it would have
question.
gone prior to him.
So part two of the question, as again, and I only want I don't expect you to answer on behalf of America. Just answer on behalf of yourself and your own demographic insofar as you can. But how do we walk back from the edge? How do we walk away? Like if you envisioned it as America standing on the edge of a cliff, how do we back up?
Well, first of all, I think you have to do it slowly. I think if you try to, just all of a sudden force everybody back rapidly, that's not going to work. I think that's why, we had to have a moderate candidate in the end.
I
To
think
bring
you're.
enough
I
people
think
over the
Trump
line.
proves that. I think Trump proves that. Trump was a hard, violent pendulum swing back from having a black man as president. I think Trump was a huge swung reaction, and look at the devastation that wreaked. But if we go back slow, aren't we enabling the Overton window to continue shifting right? If we don't try to drag back left pretty hard?
We are, look, if we take the Senate, I fully think that we should just plow ahead with every
Yeah.
Liberal agenda item that we want and be unapologetic about it. But if it comes to a point where we don't have the Senate and we do have to make some concessions, I think if you want to start walking back some of the racism, you have to start humanizing people instead of vilifying them.
And humanizing is an important word because we have a comment in the chat that speaks to that to the dehumanization that's been going on. Danny says, "I worked for a man who in Atlanta who was I don't know this I'm not going to get all this right who was with someone in Atlanta, Georgia in 1960, and someone in Atlanta, Georgia in 1960 shot and killed a black man for begging, and was charged with discharging a firearm within the city limits. That was the charge. And so that in 1960, people can go, oh man, that's brutal. That's pre-Civil Rights Act America. That's horrendous. That's so bad. I can't believe we used to be there. Breonna Taylor was shot by police, and the policeman who shot her was charged with recklessly discharging a firearm, not murder. We have gone precisely nowhere.
Take this a step further. The wanton endangerment charge in that case was not for the bullets that went into Breonna Taylor or Breonna Taylor's
It was
apartment.
to the ones who went through the neighbor's walls.
The white neighbor's walls.
We've gone nowhere on that. And in fact, I think it's possible that in the last few years we've lost enough ground that I don't know how far I think we are from people being emboldened enough that we would see a large-scale movement to revoke certain civil rights. Literally, actually, you know what? I'm going to take that back. I know for a fact we are already there because we have seen civil rights revoked during this administration. We have seen the right of transgender people to serve in the military revoked by this president.
Oh, absolutely. And if he had won a second term, with Amy Coney Barrett in there, that women were going to lose. It could still happen. But it's crazy the rights they're looking to scale back against anybody that's not a Christian white male.
So a lot of people I've been speaking to have this fear that 2022 is going to involve a red wave, and that we're going to we're going to see Biden remain a sort of lame duck president for his entire presidency, or that Republicans are going to gain control of all three branches again and keep ramming their agenda home the way that they did under the last year of Obama's term. And I think that's a very realistic fear, and B, leads me to this question. The only way that that happens, I think, is if progressive voters and blue voters and even moderate voters give in to fatigue. And fatigue is a real problem, compassion fatigue. It's so hard to keep caring about everything for so long. And it is so easy to go, oh, we don't have Donald Trump anymore. We have Joe Biden. We can relax. We can relax. And the reality is we can't relax because we have to watch for this impending red wave because they are certainly not relaxing right now. Trump's supporters are feeling as devastated and ready to engage on every level as we were when Trump was elected. And so I think a red wave is a realistic fear. How do you tell someone, David, how would you tell someone to stay engaged and battle away that compassion fatigue, that voting fatigue, that engagement fatigue?
Well, I think first of all, it's okay to take a moment to exhale now and recharge a little bit.
A little bit.
A little bit, but that's important. It's important to, turn off the TV for a couple of days.
Stop doom scrolling, people.
Stop doom scrolling and start hope scrolling.
Yes, hope questing. I love that.
And I think a lot of it is going to come down to how the narrative is framed. I can already tell you that Joe Biden's going to inherit a fucking mess. And the Republicans are going to try to pin that entire mess on him. And if they are more successful in pinning that on him, just like, when Trump inherited Obama's economy and took credit for it.
Yep.
It time after time, it seems like Democrats just inherit these awful messes from Republicans and have to clean up their mess. And then Republicans get back into office and just claim responsibility and then blame all the bad. Whoever was president to kick off 2021 was going to be dealing with a shitstorm.
I agree.
But Democrats cannot allow Republicans to frame the narrative that this is Biden's fault. They need to give him ample amount of time to clean up that mess and try to institute some of his own policies. And I think it's important for people to realize that we're still a very, 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 very fragile, democracy, republic, whatever you want to call it, to the point where, there were a lot of people that took their foot off the gas when Obama was elected and said, oh, look, we've elected a black man. Everything in this country, has calmed down now. We can stop talking about racism, blah, blah, blah. And that's just not the case.
And then Trump.
I mean, just because this thing is not front and center does not mean it's not going to be front and center tomorrow.
Right. So, okay, that's the question, I guess. So it's okay to take a breath. I agree. So we take a breath. We breathe in, we exhale, we give ourselves this moment to cherish the fact that we arrested our free fall, that we pulled the ripcord and the parachutes are engaging. When does work begin for 2022?
I think work is going to begin for 2022 almost immediately. I think it's good. People are suffering almost from PTSD from this administration, and I really think that there's going to be a large mental health crisis. Not that there isn't already a large mental health crisis, but I think there's going to be an expanded mental health crisis surrounding people's PTSD over this. And it's not just going to be good enough to say, okay, it's over. People are going to have to unpack everything that happened in the last 4 years. But the thing about Donald Trump is he just gave us so much shit to rally against. It exhaustive by design. It was, it started with the Women's March for Trump, which was on his inauguration day, which was a great event. But then it was, March for Science the next week and March for this the next, because he just gave you so much shit you had to rally against. Under Biden, I think it would be help people to stay more engaged and more energized if they, really pick their battles to the point where, you say, this is my main issue. I'm going to focus on this. I'm going to put my energy into this as being my main thing, and let's work on this, and let's not, put our eggs in too many baskets personally.
Yeah,
I mean, it's okay to want all of those things, but you can't actively work for all of those things all at once in an effective level. I think it would behoove to have more of a kind of divide and conquer strategy where, you're allowing different segments of the party and of the voters to take up certain mantles, and other people saying, that seems to be covered. I'm going to put my energy over here.
That's really good. That's a great point. I'm going to read one more comment from the chat. I'm going to ask you to speak quickly on that, and then you and I are gonna part ways as great friends for the evening while I make a few announcements to my viewership here. Unless you want me to make the announcements while we're hanging out, but in which case, hang out. But this is, I think, about as close to a sum up that I was planning to give. From Joe Maskey in the chat says, I really fucking hope no one ever underestimates the stakes ever again. I am changed in my relationship to civic engagement in that respect. I hope enough others feel the same. That is what's going to keep my finger on the pulse. Speaking from my own self there, just coming away from Joe and being bright again, that's exactly how I feel. I hope very dearly that the stakes are never this high again. I hope this is the highest stakes election of my life because everything was on the ballot. The soul of democracy was on the ballot, and we held on by a thread. And January ain't here yet. We're still hanging on by a thread, and there are a lot of people trying to cut that thread. And there is looming violence. There are threats of violence, and things could go a lot of different directions. So, if I were to ask you, David, to sum up how you're keeping the faith, as it were, what would you say?
In terms of keeping the faith, I think a lot of my faith came down to the election results. I mean, I was discouraged to see the number of people that still came out to vote for Trump, but I was encouraged that, at the end of the day, Americans, even though the Republicans did everything within their power to stifle voting, to close polling places, to disenfranchise people, no matter what they did, there were still more Americans that came out and said enough of this shit than there were that said, we want more of this shit. And let's keep in mind that Donald Trump, in both of the elections, lost the popular vote by millions of votes.
Right.
George Bush, the first time he ran, lost the popular vote.
Democrats have won 7 of the last 8 popular votes.
Yes. So you have to see that in terms of that the sentiment seems to be on our side. I think one thing that we can really do is push our elected officials to put into place laws that will prevent some of this from happening again by somewhat limiting presidential power or by somewhat increasing the power of Congress to the point where we can't find ourselves here again. We were at the precipice. We were able to pull back from that, but it laid bare the inequalities and the loopholes and the issues in our political system. And I really think that some of that stuff needs to be addressed and closed and prevented from ever happening again, or it will happen again.
Yeah. And then, all right, this is the last question. Give it to me in like 5 words or less, okay? Abolish the Electoral College, question mark?
Yes.
One word.
Yes.
One word. Love it. David, thank you so much for joining us. Wave goodbye to the Lamplighters, and we will see you in the chat again soon, I am very sure. Guys, that's David Miller. I hope you guys enjoyed hearing his perspective on things. I know I did. And we're going to get into some announcements real quick, but we're going to say goodbye to him. So peace out, dude.
Been a pleasure.
Talk to you soon.
Okay, later, guys.
And let me just... And I'm back. Whew, that was heavy, right? But funny and interesting, I hope. I don't want to keep you guys up a whole lot longer. I've got some stuff to go do myself. I've got some dinner to make, and let me just Oh yeah, here's my outfit today. You like? But thanks, David, for coming through. I got a couple of announcements that are just about me and about what's going on in my life and what's going on this week and what the schedule is going to be like and things like that. And I'd love to just very quickly go over that all that stuff with you so that we don't kind of lose track of that. And so the first thing is I think at this point you guys all heard I just got slammed a bunch of times by the universe. Um, and I am gonna pull up some things to look. I got slammed pretty hard by the universe, and I was gonna just kind of like knuckle up and bull through it, but mostly you guys and a few other people convinced me to ask for help. But I didn't want to just ask for help, and so what we decided to do was just sort of do a little benefit show. And we're not setting a date yet. We're going to see how much how long it takes to hit my target goal, which is essentially to replace my vehicle that was destroyed by vandals and thieves. Um, and I have a cool surprise planned for you guys at that concert when that's ready to happen. But anyone who tips or donates in any way this month at all, that money is going to go toward getting me mobile again, so that I can drive places and do things and have a job again. Because I do still have to travel for work on a fairly regular basis. You know, I have to drive to do to pick things up and to go places and to do stuff for other people and to go see Peter Brown, my guitar tech, and things like that. So that's happening. It's called I Will Get By, and I know I know that is up and visible in Red Tower Records and a bunch of other places like that. And I would love if you guys would just take part in that. And you know, I don't love being in this position, but I also recognize that as an artist, in a pandemic, there wasn't a whole lot I could have done to keep my head further above water, and I was always only ever one big hit away from being broke again, no matter how hard I was working. And so that happened, and it sucks, but we're gonna pull through. We've actually already raised like $900 toward either a down payment or the full purchase of a used vehicle or whatever it's gonna end up being. And I'm humbled by that. I had a person give $500 alone, and I tried to give it back. It was crazy. But I'm not taking direct charity. We're gonna do that. We're gonna do a benefit show. So every person who donates, tell me a song you want to hear. I can't promise I'm gonna play every song that's requested because obviously the concert can only be so long. But I can promise that every song I play will be a request from somebody. And you can Venmo or go to brightkelly.me/tips to drop any amount of money. I don't care if it's $1 or if you make me crazy by donating too much or whatever you want to do. But all of that is going to go toward putting 3 hours of Freebird. Only if you buy me a car. You buy me a car, I'll play Freebird back to back for a while. But ideally, this will raise enough money for me to get mobile again after having had to sell my poor Honda, which broke my heart. I love that car so much. And then, kind of get back out there in the world and keep doing the thing. I don't want to harp on that any longer. So that's it on that. It's called I Will Get By, and you guys can Venmo or go to brightkelly.me/tips, and I'm tracking all tips received this month toward that. So, kind of ignore the Spooktober goal. I'm actually going to remove that from the screen. Ignore the Spooktober goal. That doesn't exist anymore. In other news, Thursday, Songs in the Big Chair is doing By the Numbers. So make all your go to Discord, brightkelly.me/chat. Go to Discord and go to Jukebox 0 in our Discord channels and make requests for songs that have numbers in the title. Your favorite song with a number in the title. And I'm going to play as many of those as I can on Thursday and a few of my own. And it's going to be really great. I think that's the main news. Next week, on the Monday Method, we have singer-songwriter Dan May, who is one of the most interesting people in the world. And we're going to be talking about his career, his music, his life, things that he's done, and a few other things. And it's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to have him for probably about an hour. And for the rest of it, we're probably going to be drawing or recording or something over here in the Britosphere. I hope you guys had a lot of fun tonight. I really did. I'm loving being like a talk show host or whatever this is turning into. A lot, actually. Surprisingly a lot for a guy who's not crazily sociable. But yeah, okay. So can't promise anything then. So I know my tech bar Joe has been putting the links in the chat while I've been talking. So hopefully you guys go visit Red Tower Records or our Discord server and join in all the fun as we try to fundraise new wheels for me and Mel and Mercutio and everybody over here at Casa Bright, and hopefully you come see us on Thursday for By the Numbers. All tips received during Thursday shows will also just immediately get you the invite. The concert is going to be invite only. I don't know if it's going to be on Zoom or Facebook or something else just yet, but I do know that it's going to be private, and you're going to need a password to get in, and you can only get that password by donating or tipping or whatever. But it literally $1 and you're good. Or you can be like my crazy former college professor and dump way too much money on me and make me feel really, really guilty and crazy. I don't know. It's gonna be what it's gonna be. Alex, sorry I missed a lot this week. Where's this concert thing? What do I need to do? Alex, I'll give you the story then, because it didn't occur to me that everybody didn't know. And Kara, yeah, we're at the end. But go watch the replay later. It'll be up. Alex, thieves showed up on our block and cut the catalytic converter and off my car and damaged the exhaust and a bunch of other things and caused enough damage to the vehicle that it was not realistically salvageable. So I sold it essentially to a guy who was going to try to do a restoration project or part it out or something. And now I'm trying to raise money to get new wheels or to get either a down payment or a new used car or whatever it's going to be based on how much we're able to raise to go toward it. I wasn't going to do that at all, but the lamplighters yelled at me and said I had to ask for help because the pandemic is kicking our ass over here a little bit. And I don't like asking for help, and certainly no one is obligated to give money, and certainly not the people who are so loyal that they come see the show all the time. You're not actually obligated to give any money. I don't want you to feel like you are. But yeah, that's what happened. I got screwed again. It was a bad day. It was brutal. I did not feel good about it, but I am feeling good today because America's looking like we're headed back in a generally good direction, and I've got some great shows coming up, including a Patreon-only pick show and a Thanksgiving special called We Are So Fucking Thankful. And I've got interviews with Dan May and with a voice actor who does some anime and video game work and a lot of other stuff scheduled for December. So, things are looking more upbeat and more positive. And again, I cannot stress this enough. You definitely want to be at the benefit concert because I'm going to announce a very, very big piece of news at that show. Very big. I'm going to announce a very, 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 very big piece of news. A very cool piece of news. Something I'm super excited about. Alex, I also I have a new Facebook account. You'll have to friend Bright Lucas Kelly on Facebook now. And Base Squids has redeemed a bad joke. No, I did. What? Okay, fine. Let me see. I'm going to type in cringy jokes. And I'm going to read you a bad one. Hey, Dane. What's something that's red and bad for your teeth? A brick. That one's all delivery. I liked it. It's pretty bad. Anyway, guys, that's it for the Monday Method tonight. I hope you enjoyed your time with me and my weird, Stephen Colbert opening monologue, and all the conversations we've had with David today, and with you guys, and for weighing in the chat. And I hope you're stoked for By the Numbers on Thursday. I know I am. It's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be loud. I'm busting Stormcrow and the amps back out. So yeah, stay tuned for that. Thank you for joining us here on the Monday Method, and I'm gonna just say goodnight before I keep rambling, because y'all know I could ramble with the best of them. So thank you for watching, thank you for listening, and thank you for being here. Good night, guys.